Hey folks, it's Abby, and September was a really good reading month for me, as you can tell by the height of this stack. So let's dive into the stats of what I read. I read 4,553 pages across 15 books. Out of that, I did 53 hours of audiobooking. For my biggest book, this is between two this month. One of them is The Dark Vault by V.E. Schwab, which comes in at 698 pages. The other is Don Quixote by Cervantes, which comes in at 773 pages. However, I've been reading this for multiple months. So I didn't read this all in September, but I did read all of this. On a similar note, the oldest book that I read this month, same theme, Don Quixote, Cervantes. This was released in 1615, but I read this across multiple months. The one that I actually read the entirety of in September is Monstrous Regiment by Terry Pratchett, one of the Discworld books, and this was published in 2003. So just a little bit of a difference. I was actually alive for this one. Then to break the books down into their genres, so I read one non-fiction, one poetry book, one contemporary, one classic, 3 sci-fi, and 8 fantasy books. Then for the nationality of the authors, so I have one pair of Swedish authors, a Palestinian author, a Canadian author, a Spanish author, a Singaporean author, a Chinese author, 2 Japanese authors, 2 English authors, and 5 from the United States. Then for the format that I read the books in, so I read 4 books in hardback, 3 books in paperback, 2 books via ebook, 3 books via audiobook, and 3 books mixed media. These 2 were a mix between ebook and physical book, and this one was a mix between the hardback and the audiobook. Those are the stats. Time to get into the books. First things first, I don't think most of you will notice, but some of you will do, because you are observant. I hate my hair. I was a bridesmaid at my friend's wedding recently, and the hairstylist cut it. And I then went and got my annual trim, and I got 4 inches off, which I know you can't see, but like, it now only comes, like, it was another 4 inches longer than it was long, and so now it's puffy and it has these stupid fringe bits. So if you see me constantly touching my head, it's because I hate my hair right now. We persist. The first book that I read in September was Katabasis, I don't know, by R.F. Kuang. I really enjoyed this, but also had issues with it. It's not the perfect book that a lot of the Kuang stans are saying it is. It does not have no faults. It very much has faults in there. But at the same time, I really enjoyed it. It was a 4-star read. I had a great time with this book. We are following primarily a woman who is doing her PhD in magic studies at Oxford, and her PhD advisor is dead. And so she is going to delve into hell to go and get him back out, because she needs him for the references for her to go get a job afterwards, after the PhD. And we follow her and also one of the other PhD students who ends up going into hell with her. They learn more about their PhD advisor. They also learn more about themselves. I am not a fan of how sexual assault keeps being used as a plot point. I don't know, because there is the potential, there is no need for Kuang to tell us about this at all. And there is the potential that she has went through this and is using the writing in books as kind of a catharsis of kind of working through it. But at the same time, she consistently uses someone being sexually assaulted as then a turning point for the character, and it's a concerning continuous use if it's not self-catharticism, you know? But then she shouldn't have to tell, but like, I'm still pointing it out. There is consistent in most, if not all, of her books that she's published where a woman is sexually assaulted. There is also the over-reliance on a man. She seems to go from one obsession, our main character Alice, I'm wonderful with names, Alice. She seems to go from one obsession to another. I did really enjoy, there's a bit at the end where, I don't want to spoil anything, there's butterflies and there's a god and they're on a beach. I think that should get me where I need to be. I loved that. I wanted more of that from the whole book. Like, that's what I wanted. If the whole book had been that, 5 stars. As it is, loved that section, really enjoyed how that section was written and how it made the characters think about each other. I enjoyed the delving into different interpretations of hell, so obviously Dante's Inferno and other classic writings, and also some other modern ones have talked about what they interpret hell to be, and I enjoyed seeing Kuang merge these together into one complete whole that takes inspiration from them all, and also the different aspects of hell and how they would actually potentially play out. I thought it was a really unique interpretation that also utilised a lot of aspects of other people's interpretations. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It is really well done, but I do have my criticisms. Forest of Noise by Mosab Abu Toha. This is a collection of poetry by a Palestinian poet. You are going to be expecting exactly what this poetry is filled with. Heartbreaking and heart-wrenching poetry, uplifting, familial, friendship-based group love, and also just the continuous struggle of living under a genocide. There isn't too much to say about these for me, as someone who doesn't review poetry too often, but I will definitely be rereading this at some point. It is heartbreaking and emotional and also inspiring, and it's everything that you would expect it to be. Then my book that was for my 10 books that are going to expire by the end of the year post, and this is The Dark Vault by V.E. Schwab. I wasn't sure if I was going to read both books in here, both the archived and the unbound, in 1 month, but I did. I read them both, and I actually enjoyed this more than the other Schwab content I have read before. I still didn't love it. This is no higher than a 3-star, but compared to the other Schwab books, it keeps happening. For me, with Schwab, her ideas are fantastic, but her specific execution I seem to really struggle with. I don't seem to ever care about the characters. I did this via audiobook, and I think that helped, because I already usually have a slight separation anyway when I do audiobook versus physically reading. The concept of this book is that we are following a young girl, and she is YA, and she has access to this, like, library, and everybody has a story to tell, a life seen in pictures only librarians can read. The dead are called histories, and the vast realm in which they rest is the archive. And we're following Mackenzie Bishop, and she is someone who takes the souls back to the archive to rest when they have escaped and are disruptive and unhappy. And obviously shit goes wrong. There's souls that get out that shouldn't be out, and there's badness, and it's an enjoyable read. 3 stars. Which is good for me with Schwab. Spiderlight by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I did not expect this to be what it was. I was just very excited to read another Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's a fantasy, it's a short one. I was just excited to dive in. We're following a spider that is then forcibly changed via magic into a human form so that he can be utilised by these agents of the light to save the realm, but the spider is an agent of the dark, and so it's a lot of pain points, and it's a lot of discussion of war, of right and wrong, of religion, of religious bias and religious hatred, of assuming things about people and assuming that the dark, that someone who is on the other side of your viewpoint is dark and can only be dark, and realising that there's actually more nuance there. For a very short book, under 300 pages, Tchaikovsky squeezes in a lot in this book, and I really enjoyed it. It was a quick read, blasted through, solid 4-star. A little more of a difficult read for me, and this was Svenska Fåglar, Ugglor och Rovfåglar of Martin Emtenäs and Jonas Källberg. This is a Swedish book about nighttime birds and birds of prey, and it's intended for children, and my Swedish is very bad. So there we go. It's got like a little image of the bird and some information about it, and it's very cute, very informative, which I specifically enjoy because it's not too different from England, but it's different enough that it's fun. There was an incident with the owls. This section here lists off all the different names for the owls, and I was like, okay, instead of typing them all out because I'm lazy, I'm going to take a picture on the Google Translate, see what that says, and out of the 10 that were here, 8 of them were marked as barn owl. So I sent it to my Swedish friend. I was like, don't worry, I'm going to figure these out on my own and figure out what they actually are, but look what Google Translate says. This, if you speak Swedish, I think is really, really fun, especially if you have kids that speak Swedish that are interested in the natural environment. This is very educational, but very short, very enjoyable. The artwork is really lovely, and I am looking forward to reading my 3rd and final copy. There are more, but I don't own them. I only own one more, which is about animals. There's also Svenska gröd och kräldjur. I don't know. But I really enjoy these. even though they are very niche. Then a book that has been on my TBR for a little while now, and it came from an unhaul from a friend, and that is 1,000 Nights by E.K. Johnston. I've read one book from E.K. Johnston before. My brain's going blank, it's this one, sorry editing Abby, and I really enjoyed that one, so I was actually quite excited to get into this, but I just never had the excuse. So I'm really glad that I was... God, my voice. So I'm really glad that I was finally able to get to this one. In this book we are following a young girl, a teenager, and in this realm a king comes to each of the different villages and takes a new bride, a new queen, fairly frequently because he kills them all off consistently. And there's nothing that anyone can really do about this because he is all-powerful, and otherwise the kingdom runs very well. And this girl decides that she knows it's going to be her sister who's taken because her sister is beautiful, and so she is going to dress up to the max to make sure that the king takes her instead. And he does so, and in return her sister prays to her as though she is a god whilst she is still alive. In the culture they pray to their ancestors as gods, but she does this whilst her sister is still alive, and this gives her sister some level of power and allows her to not be immediately murdered by the king. And we are following the king discovering that for some reason he's still keeping her alive, and the tension there and how she is trying to free the kingdom of this tyranny. It's really well written, really enjoyable, blasted through it, very much way of its time, but in a good way. I had a great time with this one, and I'm very glad I finally read it. I am debating whether or not it stays on my shelves, because this is high enough rated that it would usually say, but my shelves are very full and I don't think I'm going to reread it. So this one is going on the shelves for now. One that is staying on the shelves, this is Extremity by Nicholas Binge, sent to me by the folks over at Book Break. This is a sci-fi mixed with a police procedural. We are following these three characters. One of them is a lowly police officer, the other one is a former retired police inspector who left because of some shit going down when she was undercover, and then this guy is still in the force and brings her back in because it's related to her undercover work, what's going on. And we have a murder, we have two bodies for the same person who have both been found murdered on the same night. There is some level of time travel in this. This book was just such a quick read. I know it's short, but it's really fast, really engrossing. The way it's written as a police procedural with the sci-fi elements in there too is a lot of fun. This is very much a light sci-fi. If you're not usually into sci-fi, you can definitely read this and still enjoy it. I had a fantastic time, and I am looking forward to reading more from Binge in the future. The next book, and that is Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. This is a Murderbot book, so we all know I love this. This is the sixth book in the series. Had to count them up there. And I don't want to obviously spoil what this book is about. In the very first book from Murderbot, we follow Murderbot, who is a security unit, and they've managed to override their governance module, but instead of using that to go off the rails and be evil, instead they just watch soap operas that they've downloaded into their brain and end up having to save the idiotic humans from themselves. This one actually has a slight similarity here in that we are following a dead body that has been found on a station, and Murderbot is trying to figure out what happened. I'll give you enough of a spoiler for that. I feel like it doesn't ruin anything. And I adore this series so much. Murderbot is so relatable in the worst ways possible, and is just so engrossing, and I adore this series. I will happily go back and reread and reread and reread as a comfort read. On a very different note, we have Don Quixote by Cervantes. I was buddy reading this with the wonderful Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe. Thank you so much for buddy reading this with me. That changed the entire experience. So we read part of this separately on our own. There are 2 books, it depends on what version you get that's published and what translation you get. But there are at least 2 books in the bind-up. They were published separately originally, and this is the bind-up of both books. The first book is a lot more enjoyable for me, especially the first half of the first book, so if you have an edition where it's in 4, actual book 1 is the best for me. It's fast paced and it is just as silly as the rest of it, but it's very quick. You're still kind of learning the world that Cervantes is writing, and that's enjoyable. Unfortunately, the rest of it drags. In this book, Cervantes is mocking the popular trope at the time of the knights errant and them going around the countryside and doing all these wonderful deeds. He mocks this to within an inch of its life, and whilst I enjoy that, it does get very repetitive. I also enjoyed Sancho, his squire, and his ridiculous adventures and how he tries to deal with Don Quixote being insane, whilst also seemingly being slightly insane himself. Reading this with Olivia, which we only did for, I believe it's just the yellow sections that I have here. Reading this with Olivia was so much better because I got to complain about the things I was fed up with, but also it makes you drag out the points, because we're reading 1 chapter, 2 chapters a day, and so you're like, oh yeah, this bit and this, and you have to think of the parts, and it made this experience so much better. The reading experience, once I included Olivia, overall 3 stars. The book itself, 2 stars. It is overly flowery, and that is of course the intent of Cervantes, but when you are reading almost 800 pages of 1600s writing that has been translated from Spanish to English, the flowery writing with the sentences that are 50 words long with no punctuation gets old fairly fast. And I feel like if I'd read this in like small installments, then perhaps it would have been better. And I did like the ending. The ending definitely like redeemed it slightly because that was enjoyable, but it drags on for too long and it ruins its own joke. It's trying to mock and be sarcastic about things, but it just takes it too far and takes too long going over it. And I can see why it's a classic. I can see why people enjoy it. I can also see why people reference the windmills, because that happens in the first 100 pages. The most known thing about this book happens in the... I'm being generous with 100, I think it's the first 50 pages of this 800-page book. So that tells you a lot about Don Quixote right there, that the most referenced thing is from the first 50 pages of the book. So I'm glad I've read it. I can appreciate it. I very much appreciate the characters, and I feel like if I was to sit down and discuss the characters with someone, I would have a lot of positive things to say about them, but it just drags on far too damn long. A bit like this review. Next up, Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I tried reading this a little while ago now, I think over a year ago, and I put it down. I had too much on my plate at the time. I put it down, come back to it later. And in putting it down, I got it conflated with another book. And so I didn't want to pick it up because I got it conflated with Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin, and I just didn't want to read it. But I forced myself, if you saw my, I think it's this side, if you saw my TBR video, this was one of the books that was like the right size to match up with one of my arcs, and so I forced myself to pick it up, and I'm glad I did, because obviously the conflation was all in my head, and it's not. I had the idea of these, what they called AFs, artificial friends, and I had the idea that they were like hacked, and were going different places, and the hacking is from Little Eyes. There's no hacking. In this instead, we are following these artificial friends. They are robots with, I guess, AI intelligence in them that people purchase for their children to have a friend around them all the time. And we follow Klara, who is a very observant AF. And we're following this AF's life when they've been assigned to a disabled young girl who has a short life expectancy, and so it's this artificial friend who's not been taught about disability, because of course, why would they do that? Learning that the young girl that she cares for is suspected to die much sooner than she is programmed to accept, and she is trying to do things to save this young girl who she loves, whilst also getting treated very weirdly by the family for a variety of reasons. It talks a lot about grief, a lot about death, a lot about the death of a child, and this is just actually a really good book. I've heard some very negative things about Kazuo Ishiguro. I didn't see them in this book. A lot of it is his sexism, is what I've heard about. And truthfully, I didn't see that in this book, and my other half calls me a raging feminist. So I feel like you're probably safe to read this one. Just about managing to make my voice last through this video. I completely lost my voice last week. As you're seeing, this is like 2 weeks ago. I couldn't speak at all, so I'm so glad I pre-filmed. Then the next book is The Kamogawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai. This is a translated Japanese novel. Tell me by who? Jessie Kirkwood, and I really enjoyed this one. Nobody is surprised. This is a book where we are following a former detective who now runs a small restaurant that has very minimal advertising, very minimal signage, and one of the things that they do in this restaurant is they can do detective work and find an old meal that you once had. It's Japanese, so it's all obviously Japanese food, but if it's the specific sushi that your mum used to make when you lived in a different prefecture 30 years ago, you go and tell them, and they get as much information as they can from you, and they try and recreate the meal, both in the environment around you at the time, the emotions that you would have been feeling, and also with the exact ingredients from the different locations. I really enjoyed this. It was obviously a lot of mention of different Japanese foods. I know a little bit about that, not a lot, but I still enjoyed it regardless, so it doesn't matter if you're not familiar with Japanese food, it's still a good book. And it was just really sweet to obviously have the discussion of the emotions that go alongside the meals, why a meal might mean so much to someone, and why it might have that connection, and I just really enjoyed it. It's another fantastic translated Japanese novel that's all about connecting with yourself and with your past and understanding why your emotions are what they are, and I have a feeling this is going to be a new series that I love. I am excited to read, oh, I forget the name of the second book, but I plan on reading it soon. Then it's time for my Discworld book of the month, Monstrous Regiment by Terry Pratchett. I loved this and did not expect to. I went into this just assuming it would be fine, and this was so good, this was so good. So this is following, does it say her name? Polly Perks, and she decides that she's going to cut off all of her hair and go and pretend to be a boy and join the military in her country, and they've been fighting a war for a very long time and they consistently need new recruits, and so she cuts off all her hair, pretends to be a boy, learns the swagger and all of that, and goes and joins this military regiment. And obviously, considering they've been fighting this war for such a long time, there's stuff going wrong with the war. It's not going as well as they propagandise to the people, and she learns more about this being on the inside, but also learns more about the other troops that she has enlisted with. This is so much fun. I think for the first half of it I was just like, yeah, good Discworld book, standard. All the Discworld books get, like, apart from Colour of Magic, get 3 stars. All of them. And this one I was like, oh, 3 stars, 5 stars. Colour of Magic is 3 stars. And so this one I was like, yep, another 4-star book. Doo -doo -doo. And then I got like 65% of the way in and I was like, I don't want to say too much about it because obviously I don't want to spoil anything. It's obviously interlinked within Discworld, but it is a standalone book. So I don't want to spoil anything, but I adore the feminism in here, the discussion of war and how pointless it is. This is one of my favourite Discworld books. Then I don't have a copy of this one to hold up, so I will hold up the first book. I read A Steeping of Blood by Hafsa Faisal. This is the first book, A Tempest of Tea. This is A Steeping of Blood, so I can put that down, there you go. This is the second and final book in the duology for this series. The first book we are following Arthi? I'm so bad with names. Arthi! Oh, look at me. Look at me knowing what I'm talking about. So we follow Arthi, and oh gosh, in the first book they run a tea house that is also secretly a coconut water house, because if vampires drink coconut water it can satiate some of their need for blood, and so a lot of them do that to avoid drinking blood from people. But there is a lot of political machinations going on here. Arthi is actually an immigrant from another island that was invaded by the country that she is now living in, and she is simultaneously trying to keep a hold of her identity even though she has no family back there, no actual links for her to go back, whilst also trying to integrate into the society. And then there is the vampires, there is the political machinations. I am trying to be vague. I could say so much more about this second book, but I don't want to give any spoilers. I had a really fun time. I didn't quite love it as much as I loved the first one. The first one I was so obsessed with that the wonderful Caitlin from Letters from Kinradi bought me the Waterstone Special Edition because I was obsessed. So this was a 5-star, no question. Steeping of Blood is a solid 4-star. I really enjoyed it. I am tempted to buy the special edition so it matches A Tempest of Tea because I had fun with the second book, and I really enjoyed the second book's discussion on war crimes. I'm like, oh, this is suddenly quite dark. But yeah, the discussion on war crimes, on experimentation, on who is right and wrong and how much forgiveness you can give someone. There's a lot in this series, and recommend. Then from the end of one series to the start of another, this Gilded Abyss by Rebecca Thorne. I didn't realise when I was picking this up that this is actually the start of a trilogy, I believe. And we are following primarily Sergeant Nix Ma, and she is a sergeant in the military in this country, and she left her past behind when she previously was working with the people's favourite princess, who also joins the army, as the royal families want to do. And they do something in the past, they have some sort of mission in the past, things go wrong, and Nix is like, I ain't ever speaking to her again, I'm done. Unfortunately, she is speaking to her again. Princess, who is called Cassandra, comes and gets Nix and says, I need you to come down with me on this boat to go back where we went undersea for the last mission, because something is going wrong and I don't trust anybody else. And she then also slightly blackmails Nix to doing it, and they end up going on the submersible. It's not quite a submarine because it's like attached and is taking them down to the city beneath the waves, and they are going down, and obviously shit goes down. I did not expect how much shit was going to go down. If you don't know, Rebecca Thorne is the author of the Tomes and Tea series, with the first book being Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. This book is not cozy. Same writing style, same romantic elements, same action elements, not cozy in the slightest. I'm fine with that, but like just so you know, it's not cozy. She even, I'm pretty sure, puts a warning in the start of this book. Please note the content warnings and read at your own risk. This book is not cozy. And I also want to mention the dedication. Ocean Gate happened 15 days after this book was published. That's it. There's no real dedication. I just thought you should know. I really enjoyed this. It left it on, I don't want to say a cliffhanger, because I've seen discourse around this lately where people are calling cliffhangers different things. Everything is resolved in terms of like urgent things, but we've left the characters mid-plot and we don't know what's going to happen next. I guess that's just the normal ending for a series. Regardless, I am excited to read the second book in the series. I really loved this. This was a 4.5-star read. It was so good. It is very dark. There is a lot of blood and death and gore, and for me that is normal in my reads, so I very much enjoyed it. And Rebecca Thorne is such a great writer, and I'm so glad that she got picked up by traditional publishing. She deserves the money. And then my final book of the month, and that is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. This one was a gift from an unhaul from Olivia Savannah, mentioned again, and I really enjoyed this one. No one is surprised. It's a little bit of a slower read than this Gilded Abyss, for example, but we are following, it's a memoir written by an old lady of her youthful days. It talks about her growing up and being abnormal for, I think this is like Regency era is what it's meant to be written in. Obviously it's all fantastical, but it seems to be Regency era, and she is not what a young lady is supposed to be. She's too interested in the dragons and in creatures and in going outside and running around and getting messy, and she's supposed to sit inside and be ladylike. And it's about her then finding a marriage prospect. Once she is married, there is then an expedition off into the wilderness in a foreign country, which of course a young woman is not supposed to do. She is still only 18, 19, early adulthood at this stage, and it's about her finding out more about dragons. Is everybody surprised? And also just how the expedition went, how they got used to living in this very different environment, how they were interacting with the locals and how that wasn't done well. I appreciate the way that that was written. I thought that was written really cleverly. This was just really interesting. I am definitely picking up the second, third, fourth books because it was just so much fun, and these covers are also gorgeous, which helps. It helps. It very much tickles the scientist side of my brain, seeing someone go out and do an expedition and log all of these details, and also the feminist side of my brain, seeing a woman do it in the Regency era. And it's dragons, so what more do you want? It was a great book to end my month on. And those are my September reads. I I'm quite impressed that I managed to get through, I say 15, the Don Quixote is a bit of a cheat, but it's 800 pages and it has to go somewhere, but 15 books that I finished in September I'm very happy with. I can't imagine that that amount is going to be the same in October. October is my birthday month, and so obviously I've got my parents visiting, I'm doing things with my partner, so I imagine I will be a little less reading heavy in October. But we shall see. I'm doing pretty well this year, I'm pretty happy, so please do let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these. I love to have discussions about these books, that's why I'm here blathering on this channel, so please do let me know, and let me know the best book that you read in October, September. And I always do this and then I never know what book to pick. I'm like, oh, tell me your best book, and then I realise that I should tell you my best book, and then I'm stuck. I don't know. I think it might be Monstrous Regiment, you know? I think it's Monstrous Regiment. There we go, there's my answer for this month. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!